Oh,
Just hit got it.
What do we got to do?
just hit got it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just can't reach.
let me get it here.
Thank you.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
All right, good morning, beautiful people of St. Tim's. So I'm a parishioner, Kim Dressel, and I'm one of the youth leaders in Sunday school. I work with the middle school, high school, and am a board member of a coalition called Alliance for Healthy Communities, along with Ellis and Patty Fitzwalter. And so I'll be talking a little bit about what the coalition does after Patty and Ellis share kind of their stories. So today's topic is going to be real. It is about the epidemic of opioid addiction, overdoses, that kind of stuff. So, but we have some options and some hope that we'd like to end the message with. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ellis and Patty.
Thank you, Kim.
Do you need me to advance screens?
No, I
Okay.
believe I hit this button here to do that. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. As Kim said, I'm Patty Fitzwalter, and that's my husband, Ellis. And we're here to tell you our story. We formed H.E.A.L Stop Heroin after our son passed. Our mission is to spread awareness in for the purposes of education and prevention. So let me introduce you to our son. This is Michael. Michael he was a great kid. He was happy, fun-loving, very loving. He was very smart. No problems whatsoever through grade school. He did very well. His grades were, excellent. Teachers did nothing but praise him. We were, and he has an older sister, Casey, our daughter. She is 3.5 years older than Michael. And that first picture of him in the tux, that picture was taken 3 months after our daughter's wedding. That's why he was in the tux, and that's why we like to use that picture, because that doesn't ever happen. But so three months after that picture was taken at our daughter's wedding, Michael passed from a heroin overdose. So starting with, when he was little, he was typical kid. We took him fishing and camping and all the kind of stuff that, you try to do with your kids that give him a fulfilled life. Got him involved in different sports. He played baseball and soccer and hockey. I think he particularly liked hockey as he got older. He loved to go skateboarding, loved skateboarding. And he was in the Boy Scouts for a few years. Almost made it to his Eagle Scout when he decided he just didn't want to do it anymore. Then when he was in middle school, I think around the age of 13 or so, it was like somebody flipped a switch. He became extremely rebellious suddenly, very angry, didn't want to open up and tell us what was happening with him. Wouldn't talk about it. We tried and tried and tried for a long time to get him to open up. And he decided he didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to do his homework. We knew something serious was happening with him, and we didn't know what it was. We didn't think at the time that he was involved with drugs, because he was kind of a recluse at this point. He didn't have a lot of friends that he hung around with, if any. He hung out in his bedroom and played video games, mainly. And so we didn't really think that that was the problem, although we weren't 100% sure. But we just couldn't get him to talk to us. So we decided at this point that we would try to seek help from professionals. So we sought counseling. Long story short, he ended up sending us to a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with ADHD, bipolar disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. So at this point in time, what just blew our minds. I was like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? And we didn't want to start on the medication regimen that they always do. That scared us, but we decided to do that because we didn't know what else to do to help him. So, of course, you know, we went for a time with medications, and that didn't help. It just seemed to make things worse. He wouldn't open up to his counselors, wouldn't talk to them, wouldn't talk to the doctors, continued his rebellious behavior. So then when he turned 16, he started smoking marijuana, telling us that it helped him with his anxiety. Of course, that was against our wishes. But he did it anyway. Michael was smart as a whip, but he was the most stubborn kid you'd ever met in your life. So then when he was 18, we found out that he was abusing Xanax. Xanax is a benzodiazepine prescribed to help with anxiety. He got it from a friend. And we found out he was abusing it because one evening, actually one early morning, our daughter tried to wake him to move his car out of her way so she could get out to go to work. And he woke up in a crazy rage and he attacked her. She wasn't injured, thankfully, but he had no memory of it whatsoever after the fact. And that's when we found out he had taken Xanax the night before, not just one, not just two. So anyway, we talked to him about that. We explained to him what he did to his sister. After a long time, he apologized. He said he understood he wouldn't take that drug anymore. So it was shortly after this, I don't know the time frame, that gets lost over time, but we started noticing things, more things. We started noticing spoons missing. We had no clue what that was about. He would be talking to us and he'd be scratching and itching like this while he's talking. And his eyes and his pupils would be small when you're talking to him. You would see him nodding out every now and then. At the time, we didn't know what these signs meant. We knew he was doing some kind of a drug, and we had no clue what it was. Again, he would never talk to us, never open up. He began to steal from us, jewelry, money. He became very abusive, physically and emotionally, verbally, I should say. He would destroy our home, put his fist through walls, throw things, break things. We went on like this for quite a while with him, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to help him, how to get through to him. finally, one night we got a phone call from the police. Michael was in the hospital. He'd been in a car accident. He was okay. Luckily, he didn't seriously injure himself or anyone else. But we found out that night that he was doing heroin. That was when I heard that police officer on the phone tell me that, I dropped to my knees. We had absolutely no idea that there was a heroin epidemic in our midst, that people were dying all around us from opioids, from heroin. Let me tell you though, before we found this out, when, I was telling you that he was stealing from us, at that point in time, I was going through breast cancer, and they had given me a prescription for nausea. And I took it maybe one time, and I put it in the medicine cabinet and forgot about it. So that prescription ended up missing as well. And also he had begun stealing painkillers from his grandmother's house. She took painkillers for rheumatoid arthritis. So those began missing. So then it was after that we found out he was doing the heroin. At this point, we finally understood the gravity of the situation. Like I said, we had no idea there was an epidemic around us and that people were dying all around us. We hadn't heard it in the news. We hadn't heard it from our circle of friends. We thought we were all alone in this battle. And so at this point in time, I guess he was 19 or so. We told him that if he didn't go to rehab and take care of this and stop using the drugs, that he could not live in our home and abuse us and steal from us. So him having no other option, no other place to go, he reluctantly went to rehab. And he came back angry that we'd sent him, and he began using again. And let me say too, that at that point in time, this was 2014, we were totally blind going into this. We didn't know what rehab to look at. We didn't know who to turn to for help. So we went on the internet and we Googled. And we ended up sending him to a rehab in Florida. We thought, well, let's, get him away from his friends, from his, and that maybe that'll help. And so he came back and he was angry and began using again. So I said, you know what, Michael, I don't care how many times we have to keep sending you back. If it's 100 times, we're going to keep doing it until you finally get it through your head. You can't use these drugs anymore. And so we sent him back. And this time he came back saying that he didn't ever want to do heroin ever again. So this was music to our ears. We thought, oh my God, finally, after all of the heartache, all of the despair, we thought, finally, he's got it. He's gonna beat this. Well, for about 2 years, he didn't do heroin or any drugs that we were aware of, but then he started to drink alcohol. And his drinking became heavier and heavier as time went on. And I was going to talk to him again about rehab. When on August 25th, 2014, I came home from work and I found his lifeless body. So this is what we have left of our son. The toxicology report said it was a combination of heroin and Xanax. When I found him, there wasn't any paraphernalia of any kind whatsoever. There was no needles, no pills, there was nothing. So we're assuming he took a pill or two or three, and that's what killed him. The combination of the two, both of them being depressants to the respiratory system, Xanax and heroin, killed him. I know that he didn't deliberately do this. He didn't deliberately kill himself. It was an accidental overdose. So what we did after that was basically nothing. We were in shock. We were ashamed that our son had been a heroin addict. We knelt down to the stigma. We buckled to the stigma. We felt it heavy on our shoulders. So after a while of just doing nothing but grieving, we saw a report finally in the news about the DEA was launching a program in 4 cities, St. Louis being one of them. It was called the Strategy 360. And their intent was to, it was community outreach. They wanted to gather volunteers from the community, whether it be professionals, parents, families who've been affected by the opioid epidemic. And we saw this story and we were like, oh my God, there's an epidemic. This is when we found out there was an epidemic. And we knew then we weren't alone. We knew then that it was happening to people everywhere of all walks of life, all races, ages, gender, economic status, everywhere. And we dove into this world now of opioid abuse, substance use disorder. We joined, groups. We listened. We listened to seminars. We listened to people speak. We learned a lot since then. And at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to my husband, Ellis. He'll kind of go into all of the things that we've learned. The thing I wanted you to take away from this first and foremost is that this substance use disorder can happen to anyone, and that we have to all be proactive and learn about it, know what signs to look for, know how to be prepared to deal with it if it happens in your family. Because it can happen anywhere to anyone, especially these days with the drugs that are out there. So thank you.
Thank you. And as she said, I'm going to go. The allergies are bad here this time of year. But I'm going to cover some of the things we learned over the last, we farmed H.E.A.L in 2018, but we actually volunteered with another group called Walking for Wellness for about a year and a half before that organization closed down and we formed our own. So what you don't know can hurt you. Prescription drug abuse is an epidemic, and 75 to 80% of everyone addicted to heroin and fentanyl started with prescription opioids. You probably didn't know it's common for teens to have pharma parties. And what that is they raid their parents' medicine cabinets, bring them to a party, throw them in the basket, and it's a free for all. Another thing, there's a misconception that if a doctor prescribes it, it must be safe. There's no further thing from the truth than that. Big pharma duped the doctors into pushing out all these Oxycontin, hydrocodone, all these opioids that really set this off into an epidemic proportion. Transition from opioids to heroin or fentanyl is easy because you no longer have to inject it. You can snort it, take a pill. So you don't have to deal with the stigma of using a needle. And people also, I think, have a misconception of if they're not injecting it, it's somehow safer. But that's so far from the truth, it's not even funny. Addiction is a disease just like any other disease. It needs to be treated. Statistically, medically assisted treatment has the best results. But it's not just a matter of giving somebody a pill, and that being a silver bullet or anything. It does require behavior modification, counseling, and such. The patient or the person that suffers the substance use disorder has to be willing to help themselves. Us as parents and family can only be there to support them through their efforts. As Patty mentioned earlier, opioids and Xanax or Xanax, which is benzodiazepine, depress the respiratory system, as does alcohol, making a combination of any of those substances extremely deadly. As Patty said, toxicology said that Michael passed because of a mixture of heroin and Xanax. Never leave a person, try to sleep it off. If you think somebody may be just sleeping off a binge, don't let them sleep it off. Keep a constant vigil over them to ensure they continue normal breathing. If you have another important thing we need to know is if we have unwanted prescriptions in our medicine cabinet, we need to get rid of them properly. We've got some information over here about DEA Drug Take Back Day. Kim, I think, also has some information about different pharmacies and stuff you can drop medications off at. And if you do have prescriptions that you need that have a potential to be abused, keep them locked up. We have some prescription locking bags over there that you're welcome to, because you got to keep them locked up so they don't fall into the wrong hands. I mean, it's crazy. Not only is your family at risk of, going in there and getting them, but crazy stuff like if you're having an open house when you're selling your house or something, people will go to these open houses just to look through medicine cabinets to see what they can get. Keep in mind, substance use disorder can happen to anyone. Never say not my child. So our name is a little deceiving because we're Heal Stop Heroin, and that is the name we chose when we started the organization because, we lost our son to heroin. However, we've branched out to cover substance use disorder in general, whether it be illegal substances or legal substances. So some of the things we got trending in our schools right now, vaping is still a big issue. Not only is it probably more harmful to your lungs than smoking cigarettes, they're vaping hashish oil. That increases the potency of that THC in that cannabis immensely. Cannabis, we're starting to normalize that so much with the legalization of it. And the cannabis today is not the cannabis that many of us grew up with. It's so much more potent, so much more detrimental to the developing brain. And then, of course, we're seeing stimulants make a big rise again with meth. It's not so much like you heard, years back where people were cooking meth and blowing up. How the Mexican cartel has found a way to produce it even cheaper, more powerful, and it's coming across the border. So you're not seeing people cooking meth like you have in the past. So what age does people think that the brain stops developing out there? Okay, you got that one right. Actually, some of studies have shown that it is developing still in the early 30s.
And we hope it continues even beyond.
It doesn't seem like we're kind of at a stagnant point at this stage, if you have to say an age, but so, and what happens with these opioids is, you know, you have pleasure center in your brain, dopamine receptors. And, you know, when you eat a good meal, you get a good release of dopamine that makes you feel good. You know, smoking somebody addicted to nicotine, that increases the dopamine levels. Opioids will have a tendency to have a 2,000% more increase of dopamine to your brain, and that damages the brain. Got a few substances here. Oh, sure.
Just make a comment. I'm a old nurse, and I took care of women and children in the late 70s, 80s, 90s. And I just want to bring up a point people probably may or may not know it, that babies are born addicts.
Oh, definitely, yes.
And I've watched many withdraw, and not just from the heroin, they're
Right.
abusers sometimes when they're born.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It is. It's a good, and it's a problem that'll stick with some of those children for many years to come once they're, you know. Yeah, that's a very good point. It's very detrimental. Any kind of substance use, whether it be alcohol, is detrimental to the developing, you know, fetus. So I've got three chemicals here, heroin, obviously, and these all represent lethal amounts of that particular substance. See, it takes quite a bit of heroin to you know, be deadly. Fentanyl, which is the biggest player in the streets right now, there's very little heroin out there, and if it is, it's cut with fentanyl. You see how much fentanyl it takes to kill you. And then there's carfentanil, where it's basically 1 grain. Now, carfentanil, fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't seen a whole lot of that, you know, surfacing. Carfentanil is actually an elephant tranquilizer, is what it is. So we've got 3 waves of the, you know, the opioid crisis from 99 to 2019. About 500,000 people died from overdose involving any opioid, including prescription and illicit. So the first wave began in the 90s with deaths involving opioid prescriptions. And if you haven't seen if you've got access to Hulu and you haven't seen the program, the series, it's about 7 segments long, called Dope Sick. It's basically how Purdue started this whole thing back in the 90s. The second wave began in 2010. Heroin started making a rise. And at that point, like I said, it wasn't an inner city problem anymore. It wasn't just due to intravenous injection of it, because you could snort it, inject it, take a pill. The third wave began in about 2013, and that's when fentanyl became introduced into the market. It still wasn't, even at the time, or when our son passed in 2014, it was just started kind of making its way into the St. Louis area. So in 2016, we lost about 64,000 people to overdose deaths, which is great. That's greater than what we lost in Vietnam War. In 2017, we lost about 72,000, and it remained at about 72,000 till about the end of 2018. It started tapering off a little bit. And then by 2019, when COVID started making its rounds and the isolation, early 2020, because of the isolation, the overdose deaths shot way up. The past year alone, we've lost about 102,000 people. So one of the biggest drivers, like I said now, is fentanyl. But even more so is the counterfeit pills that are out there that the Mexican cartel is making. They're making counterfeit pills that look like Xanax, Adderall, Oxycontin, you name it, they're making, and it's cut with fentanyl, or made with fentanyl. 4 out of 10 of those pills have enough fentanyl in them that one pill will kill you. So, and this is starting to affect not only the youth, because they're purchasing it over social media. It's also starting to affect the seniors, because the seniors living on a fixed income, they're looking for cheaper ways to buy their prescriptions. They'll go to the internet and there's no telling what you're going to get. What did I do here? Okay. I want the screen. Okay, got another little quiz here for you. That's an Oxycontin. That's an Oxycontin. One of them is fake. One of them is the real deal. Anybody want to take a guess on which is which? This one on the right here? Good job. I have to say, I think that's probably lucky, because you cannot really tell. I mean, even the trained eyes like in DEA labs and that, they have a very hard time distinguishing between the fake and the. Okay, there's a Xanax. There's a Xanax. Anybody want to guess which one's fake? You're good at this. Okay, we want to cover a few laws that have helped with the opioid epidemic. And the number one law that we got to keep in remember, because there was a point in time where when somebody overdosed, they'd just drag them outside, leave them there to die, or drop them off at the hospital, take off, you know, which what was an awful set of circumstances that was going on. So the Missouri Good Samaritan law passed the law, and it's basically protects the victim and the person that's staying around helping that victim from being arrested or charged, prosecuted, or convicted. Now that's protecting if you have any kind of paraphernalia, small amounts of drugs on you, a restraining order, something like that. You're okay to stay with that person and you will not be prosecuted. Does not, if you have warrants out on you, that it's not going to protect you from warrant, or if you've got a mobile meth lab that you're operating out of, it's not going to protect you, on anything like that. But it's intended for people to call and stay with that person until EMS arrives. So another thing, and we have this available over there too, if anybody needs it. And if you have a loved one, even if they're in recovery, if you don't have Narcan, you need to get it. Because unfortunately relapse happens. You don't have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen because you are going to have a fire. You have it there because it's possible. So there was a life-saving overdose reversal drug out there called Narcan. Narcan is actually a brand name of the nasal spray. The chemical in it is naloxone. We have the Narcan there, and it's basically, it's real easy to use. If you see somebody that, a suspected overdose, give it to them. If it's not an overdose, it's not going to hurt them. Like I said, it's very easy to use. You come across somebody, erratic breathing, gurgling sounds, unresponsive, bluing lips, it's a good chance it's probably an overdose. Pull out your Narcan, open it up, don't prime it, just stick it right in their nostril, one firm squeeze, wait 2 to 3 minutes. If they don't revive, then take the other one out of the box, use it in their other nostril in case there was some kind of blockage. The bottom picture is naloxone, the generic name. There was a time, that funding was starting to run out on the Narcan. Narcan, the nasal spray is about $80 for two doses, to where that is about 35. And there was a time when it was looking like that we were gonna have to switch over to using the intermuscular naloxone because of the cost factor. Hopefully that shouldn't be an issue, because Missouri just had that lawsuit settlement that was the biggest settlement that Missouri's ever had. And it's all going to be dedicated towards treatment and abatement of the opioid epidemic. But even though if you have the intermuscular, it's very easy. You draw 1 milliliter up into the syringe from the vial, stick it thigh, muscular part of the arm, push it in there. You don't have to worry about it. It's not you don't have to hit a vein, or it's not, it's nothing. And even if you wanted to, you couldn't inject anything illicit with that, because it's not a big enough needle. Just remember, one pill can kill. And that's one of the newest programs that the DEA has got going on right now. And it's alarming with what these pills are doing and the availability of these pills. I've got a few events that's coming up that I'd like to cover. On the 16th in Baden at Living with a Purpose, St. Louis Crush, we're going to be helping them with the You're Not Alone event. And it's designed to get resources out to the underserved of the North City and North County area. But anybody's welcome. They're going to have entertainment, we'll have resource tables, that sort of thing. We're going to be about 3 times a summer. Florissant the Florissant Knights of Columbus has a food truck night at 50 St. Rue St. Francis, which is where they hold the Valley of Fire parade, picnic and that. We will have a table. We always have a table up there where we have our resources available to help educate the community. We also have a little game that we've got set up for the kids that they're pretty much guaranteed to win. So, and we give them these little Hugs Not Drugs drawstring bags. The 24th at Faith Oakville, there's a Stomp Out Addiction Walk. You have to register for that one at faithstl.org. There'll be a lot of tables down there. Prevent Ed will be down there. And that's what it is. It's to help raise awareness about Prevent Ed and help, fundraising for Prevent Ed, which is an amazing organization that I pretty much encompasses all the coalitions out there.
Why is people making these pills if they know they can kill it? If they know the person can kill people?
It's all about money. It's all about greed and money. They don't care if it kills anybody, because in the world of illicit drugs and that, if somebody says that this particular dealer is selling medication that killed somebody, people draw to that particular dealer because they think, boy, this dealer is selling really powerful, really good stuff, but I can handle it. When in truth, you can't handle it. April 30th is DEA National Take Back Day. I know we're going to be hosting one up at Delwood Rec Center with the North County Cooperative. I'm sure there's other Take Back Day locations around. If that Delwood one isn't, convenient for you, if you go to DEATakeback.com, you can find one that is with you. Like I say, you gotta dispose of your medications properly or lock them up if you need them. And then last but not least, in 2016 is when we actually started our walking. In May of 2016, we started our walking. We were volunteering for a group called Walking for Wellness at that time, like I said earlier. And then, so we did our walks up until pretty much weekly until COVID came along. Well, that kind of shut things down. And then I developed some, issues with my back where I couldn't even walk across the street anymore. So our walks have been shut down. We're happy to say May 14th, in the place where we started them off, Ferguson. We'll be starting our walks up again at, we'll meet at 11:30, probably walk at 1. It's a very easy 2-mile walk, flat. We'd love everybody to come out and see, join us. I know Ferguson had got a very bad rap back in 2014 with the Michael Brown unrest. But we guarantee downtown Ferguson, where we're doing the walk, is a wonderful place. There's many good restaurants down there. So we'd like to see you come out and join us. We'd like to make it big. There's a picture, and you can't really see very good, but that first walk we had a real good turnout. Okay. If anybody got any questions right now, we'd certainly, sir?
It seems to me that the legal efforts to stamp out heroin and other drugs are not effective. What would you say?
Well, prevention is always the best approach. We've got to work on prevention. Prevention works. I mean, it works with it worked with the tobacco industry. It works, seatbelts. So we got to kick up our game on prevention. Hopefully we'll get more funding for treatment. We got to have beds for people, especially the underinsured or uninsured. Legal, you can't arrest somebody for a disease. Now, if that person is doing a robbery in order to support then there's consequences that's got to be met, but you're not going to arrest your way out of this problem. All we can do is educate and, do a lot of praying, a lot of work, raising awareness, and people need to get to when there's town halls and things like this. So unfortunately, so many times people don't
Nobody wants to
attend.
believe it's their
Yeah.
child. I'm gonna slide in
Okay.
because so I would say part of the problem with the epidemic was when medication, pain management, pharma started creating pain medicine, and what they told the doctors, if you watch Dope Sick, is it's non-addictive. All right, which we know now was BS. So Missouri also has not had a prescription drug monitoring program. It was the only state in the United States where I could go to 5 different pharmacies with 5 different scripts from 5 different doctors and get prescriptions filled of opioids. And now there's monitoring that's going on, at least in St. Louis County. So that's part of it, is the opioid addiction epidemic became a problem when medication was sold as non-addictive at all. So in interest of time, I just want to quickly go over just a couple of things. So we have the DEA flyer, Take Back flyer. These are the day, April 30th, where there's locations. On the backside are 24-hour drop boxes. You can drop off anytime. Nobody wants to think that this could be your future. All right, so one of the most important things is making sure that any unused prescription is disposed of properly. So you have the DEA Take Back as one option. In the avocado bag over there are what are called the Terra bags. So this, you tear open the top, you pour any unused medication in it. The directions are on the back. Fill the pouch halfway with water, seal, and shake. It has activated charcoal that makes the medication non-effective. You can throw it in the trash. So that's another option. The last one is, as a parent, so just for those parents that are here, kudos, because this is not an easy subject to hear. Through our coalition that Alice and Patty are part of, Alliance for Healthy Communities, is a Parkway Footprint Coalition that was started a number of years ago to decrease access to medication, prevention, all of those things. We put together talking toolkits for parents. So it's just a general way of how you start to have that conversation. Inside of this are a marijuana tobacco test kit and a substance abuse test kit. So as your child, we know most kids start to use that somewhere between 6th and 7th grade. So what we did with our own kids is we always had a drugs kit, and we'd put it on the counter and say, that might be your future tonight when you get home. It gave them an out to be able to say, I can't do that. My mom's gonna drug test me when I get home. All right. So this gives you those options and some of those tools just to have the conversation. So with that, you have they have other goodies that are out over there. We do free Narcan training through our Alliance for Healthy Communities, which is the first Tuesday of the month. It's at 5:15. If you want to go through the training, you can do that. I'm trying to figure out how I can gather emails if people need extra stuff. So I'll hang around and make sure that I'll get any emails if people want additional information. But I am just so thrilled that you guys were able to come and share with us.
Well, thank you.
Heartfelt.
Thank you.
So-
And thank you for showing up. We'll hang around too. Like I said, we got some stuff. We got any questions that you want to talk to us personally about instead of, bringing it up in front